focus on is this section 6 here, which covers the bonus. It's a kind of functional classification cluster logic pattern that I spent a fair bit of time researching as to what could add value and complement the trainings that are already available. So before we do that, I just want to recap on what we covered. I went over the overview of the three elements here: the bar strategy add-on, the OFA Bloodhound add-on, and the profile strategy add-on. The new components to the environment, working with the prior add-ons that you see here in red. Went through the integration aspects of working with Market Analyzer, Strategy Builder, and the Ninja script, and some of the features, the benefits of these new add-ons. You can read all this in detail in the document. Also, I highlighted that the Bloodhound add-on, in addition to working with Ninja, is specifically configured for the shark indicators. I then went to highlight and go through the chart here to assist you to find out which of the add-ons you would be interested in. Again, I went through more of the features, and then we covered the data set exposed by the bar strategy add-on and the OFA Bloodhound add-on. So these are all the data items with more detail here, and then the profile strategy add-on. You can see here all the data fields for this. I then touched and covered the summary of the provided samples for each of the two groupings of add-ons. The first 6 here relating to bar strategy and the OFA Bloodhound, and the 3 here relating to the profile strategy add-on. Again, I went through the detail, and there's comments in the code to supplement this as well. But the focus here in this video is to spend a bit of time on this indicator that I've developed, which actually paints and draws onto the screen. This comes as a bonus with the bar strategy add-on and the OFA Bloodhound add-on, so it does require this data and authorization in order to run this. How this came about, some prior research that I've done over the years, and combining with the more of a deeper kind of use and analysis and understanding of the OFA probe and rotations and the auctions and the clusters, I wanted to step back a bit and looking at the natural oscillations, pivots and fluctuations of the market, and working out a way, if it was possible, to supplement the decision point pivot process to provide more of an objective way to help read what is happening in the market right now, particularly in regard to OFA charts. What the pattern does is try to provide a measure of the natural movement in energy using the auction bars and the elements of an OFA bar being the point of control and the cluster information to assess the rhythm of the flow of the market, and to actually use this pattern as a confirmed pivot to use objectively in a way to assess a low risk trade at times around key support and resistance levels, which I'll get into on the chart as to what I use, but also at a stage where there's no clear direction or there's no clear evolution of a swing, or we're in the very early stages of a swing. So what I discovered is in using this and applying it to a chart, I'll go through the pattern and then we'll look at some chart examples, is that the pattern, which in this case involves 3 bars, with the OFA auctions and the close in relation to prior clusters, it reveals where there's a drive through prior option clusters. And in this particular pattern, we're looking back 2 bars with some conditions. And it's helping to see when we're actually, the force and the energy of the market is actually driving through these prior clusters. So what in effect we have is a kind of self-revealing pattern that actually defines the market in terms of what is happening right now. And there's some key information that can be derived and utilized in that. And you can see this as building blocks. So these building blocks of these pivots then subsequently lead into a swing once certain prior pivots, prior levels have been breached and the swing evolves. You can actually observe and build a confidence of actually reading the market as these pivots develop into a swing trade, and you can have the option of using the actual decision points and work with the CWAP, VWAP, or the VWAP entry to help confirm and give confluence and confidence to actually taking those trades. So again, this will be more apparent with examples. So there's a fair bit of detail that I've covered here in the document regarding the conditions of the pattern, which you could come back to and read. And towards the end of this, I'll touch onto the code just so that you have an illustration of the actual code involved. There's three parts to this, in that anyone who gets the bar strategy or the OFA Bloodhound add-on can immediately readily use this without making any changes. What I've done is I've developed a pattern that provides good coverage and scope for a typical order flow session. In addition to this, for those users who want to tweak, modify, enhance, or change the conditions, they may want to look back more bars to test prior clusters. They may want to add additional OFA detail in the bar. They may want to incorporate the value area price or some of the other elements. So what I'll do is I'll show it towards the end is you can quite easily, readily make some changes and tweaks and have different versions of this just by saving the version that's there and saving it as a different indicator. What I've done is I've provided here a structure, which is a good starting point and very usable already. In all the examples in the video, I make reference to the POC color logic. This is the color logic that I have gravitated towards and I find for myself and how I'm reading the auctions has proved to be most useful for myself. You can change this, as I covered in the prior video, you can change this to value logic or VWAP logic. And in fact, create different versions of this because you can change the parameter of the indicator to actually run with a value logic versus a POC logic. So let's quickly go through the conditions for this pattern. If we look at the chart over here on the right, let's start with an up probe. So for a bar classification for this, so we're at where my crosshairs are for this bar. This is an up probe in white. This is the color coding that I use. And the first condition is this either must be a buy or a neutral cluster classification for this to apply. So here we have a buy classification. If where my crosshairs are now, you see here, that has a cell classification at the top, that doesn't meet the rules. So you can see any cell classification for the current bar doesn't meet the rules. And I'll come back to explain, and you'll see that this bar is not in itself used in a pattern because it has a cell classification. So the first rules are that it must be neutral or a buy classification. If it's an up probe, the close of this auction, the close price is compared to the POC of the prior two bars in the sequence. In addition to that, one of the prior two bars must be a down probe. So either this bar or this bar here must be a down probe. So our current bar is an up probe. Now we want to have at least one or two of the prior two bars to be a down probe, and then we're comparing the close of this current up probe to the POC value of this one and this one. If I just step to the next, now the additional condition is that the close of this white auction must be greater than the bar 1 previous. Now for the bar 2 previous, the condition that I have put in place is that it must be greater than or equal to the POC of bar 2. So this one here, you can see that it's about the same price as the POC of that cell auction. So that satisfies the condition, and what you can see here is this green region has been drawn connecting the lows and the highs of this bar to this bar. So indicating a force and energy to drive up to and including the POCs of these prior bars, one of them being a selling probe. So the objective of this, as I stated, is to show the cases and the conditions where this up probe had sufficient energy drive in order flow to drive up through at least two prior POC prices of prior bars. So unlike in just a time series bar, minute chart, with the auctions, we're actually using key information that form part of the clusters of the auctions to give us an indication of the actual energy force that is in that move. So next I want to cover the converse of this, where we have a down probe. If you look where my crosshairs are here, we have a down probe bar. Cluster of classification must either be a cell, which it is as you can see with the black, or a neutral, which would be in the blue. In addition to this, any cell probe, which is in black, if it closes with a by classification, then that current bar does not meet the rules. The next part of the selling auction is that this bar here must close below the prior auction bar cluster, which you can see that it does. And for 2 bars back, it must be less than or equal to, which in this case it clearly has driven through both of these clusters here. So this qualifies this one, and you can see a red region has been drawn from this bar to this bar, showing that the close on rotation of this down probe has satisfied this pattern. This next one here also is a down selling probe, selling auction, has a selling cluster. The closes clearly below the prior one and this up auction. This up auction is needed to satisfy the rules for both this one and this one. So at least one of the prior 2 bars must include an auction in the opposite direction. So you can see with this region, it's highlighted an energy and drive of both of these selling probes driving through prior clusters, and you can see it creates this pivot effect with the continuation. If we start at the top here, you can see that in this case there was the green region, which fulfilled the pivot in the up direction, and then we had 2 subsequent red areas, and then the market drove down. This indicator, the colors in the background can be changed in addition to the opacity. In this example, I believe the opacity is set to 40. In some of the other examples, I've set it to 30, so you can gauge as to which opacity setting you can use. And obviously, you can change the colors depending on your color coding. Before I take you to some chart examples, I just want to cover this graphic that's included in the document. If we look below here, there's a couple of examples of where the down probe in black did not qualify, as we had a by classification, which you can see in white here, and that was filtered out in our rules. We have this one here with it's an up probe, which has a cell classification, so this is not included in the rules. Whereas the next one is by classification. You can see it's in the middle of the range of the auction, and one of the prior 2 bars is a down selling probe, which qualifies, and also the close on rotation of this auction closes above the 2 clusters, so this one is included. Please do spend some time in this, because I've covered some examples here of a progression of, in addition to what I'm going to cover in the charts here, I have added some narrative to cover some explanation and examples of where most often when we get these pivot scenarios, the market comes back to test. And as I'm going to show you, when we overlay some decision points, we can use the information in the value area in the POC to gauge the probable likely continued direction of the market, and it's giving you a zone and a testing area where you can choose to place a trade for a low risk to reward. I've progressed this by overlaying on a swing, just to show that seeing these as building blocks into a swing developing once it breaches the highs here. But you can also use the decision points to actually support your analysis and your confidence in actually taking a trade at the CWAP or the VWAP. Here I've added in some of the imbalance circles for those of you who have delta. Again, just layering in another element to give that confidence of imbalance on the buy side. And here the yellow ones are the diagonal imbalance. Again, just layering in the different levels as to the evolution of a swing, and showing with these pivot areas that have been highlighted in the green and the red how this can help you, and overall keeping you engaged in the chart and what is happening now. A big part of this And why I wanted to do this and spend some time in this is take you back to, if you want it, the core principles of OFA and the auctions and the point of control, but also the actual value that you can derive when there is a confirmed close in this particular pattern above the prior two auctions in the case of an up auction, and the drive below two prior clusters. And when you see these groupings of clusters together in certain areas, for what I have discovered is it can really help you in the building blocks of a swing, but also in areas of support and resistance where there's no clear direction, but clearly we have some defined support and resistance that I use that will enable us, using some of the pivots that are highlighted, to actually enter a trade for a low risk reward. Before we get to the charts, I'd just like to cover this last graphic in this set. Support resistance lines that you see here, the green and the red, I've annotated on this chart. The dotted green is the overnight high, the dotted red is the overnight low, and this black line dotted is the prior real-time session highs. So I have the previous day's RTH high and low marked on the chart, and the white is the open. So it's the opening price for this market. The dotted white vertical is the opening time. What you can see here is, as there was a drive pre-market down with these, you can see these pivots in red. So just energy force pivoting down, driving through these clusters. So there's a bit of an overlap at the open here. So we have some indecision, but in overlaying decision points on top of these red regions, you have one here and you have one here. What you can also see is the actual range from where you actually draw the decision point. It actually gives you a good illustration of the actual energy and drive and the scope and the force of each of these pivots, and you can see what typically follows. So here we have two successive decision point profiles where the POC is concentrated at the top. The second one here, you can see it's stepped down and it's driven through the open. The market is coming back up to test into this value area, and it's continuing, and then you can see that it's driven again through the open, previous real-time high. If we still were hesitating and not clear, there is an opportunity here to actually take a trade at that level there using the prior value area information. Now the other thing I want to point out here is where you have a green pattern followed by a red, it's kind of like an inverted V. And you can see, as I show you in some of the charts, is this can create quite a strong confirmation that in this attempt to drive back up through the open and drive down again, you can see the market is broken away. And we can see this here again. There's a drive up, two subsequent red regions driving down. So I just wanted to cover this graphic here to outline what can help in having these deep decision points with an objective measurement of using the cluster information. And the close is it can really add to the building blocks to the probable direction, but also more importantly, giving you a very defined stop size and entry that you can then use to justify if you want to take this trade. Let's take a look at this example in gold here. This area is the overnight 29th. You can see in the overnight, we have this green region followed by this red region and then another red region. And basically, most of these are selling probes all the way down. So by observing this, the key is to always wait for the close. This indicator is set to draw once the bar closes. So it's because it is a close of this down auction that is key. So the rotation and the close is key to determining if this pattern is valid in relation to the prior auctions. So I'm going to, from this prior up bar and to this one, add on a decision point. You can see here that the market comes back to test this point of control of this up-down region. If I now add another one, you can see the difference here is from this up probe, this first bar didn't drive through that cluster. So you can see where there's a gap in the red. The red didn't draw from here to here because this bar didn't satisfy. But the next one has. So you can see that this bar drove through two prior clusters, including this one here. So I'm going to start a decision point from here to here. You'll notice here on the 29th, this is actually the day post-Thanksgiving. So you can see there's a very narrow range between the real-time high and low for the prior session. So what I want to focus on here is the building block steps here for each of these red regions coming down back into the real-time high of the prior session. We have another transition here, which I'm going to use the first up probe that was tested and completing on the down probe here. As you can see, prices come back into. For each of the stair stepping down, you can see clearly with each of these confirmed patterns that the subsequent bars are coming back in to test the value area of these patterns. For this one, it's coming back to test this. For this pattern, these bars are coming back in to test this area. And you can also read here that you've got a selling probe, a selling probe, and a selling probe. And in each of these cases, it's definitely sellers initiating trade, paying attention to the actual position and location of the POC cluster area. So here we have a drive through back into this region. I've added in another rotation here. Now this here, as this bar closes, price then tries to push back up. It's testing this PRTH, the previous real-time session high, within this value, and then it drives down. Here we have a defined pivot area with a value area that we can use to position ourselves for a small risk to reward trade. And this building block then can lead into a longer swing trade. Additionally, if I add, starting here, if I add a swing trade with the CWAP, VWAP, and in the cyan as the DWAP, you can actually see here that the price is coming back into that CWAP area in the zone of this transition. So we have the value area, but we also have the CWAP, VWAP of this swing. Now, so whilst in essence we're effectively trading back into the range here, I just wanted to overlay with a swing profile for you to see the stages in the evolution of this swing from here, the point of control here, coming through this level here with another transition here. So it's giving you a couple of areas to focus on if there's confluence with the actual decision point itself, with the actual swing. I'll get to this in other examples as well, just to highlight that. But I just wanted to overlay just to show the steps and the progression of these building blocks as it evolves into a swing. You can actually see what happens here as we come into the open. It stalls just at the overnight low here, which is in red. So that was established just shortly prior to the actual gold open. Prices held above the overnight low. And again, you can see this sequence of green pivots in this case that have qualified to the pattern. So we have this one here, here, here. So if I just successively add some decision points, so I'm starting the decision point at the prior selling pattern when we have an up probe. So you can see where the decision point and the POC of each of these lies. So we have the next one, and you can see this stair-stepping approach that comes into this. And this green here is the overnight high. You can see here to here where prices have broken through, and we can apply a decision point here just again to give us a reading on where the point of control is and the value to give us a better gauge as to potentially taking an entry, but using this cluster information at the overnight high. So we have a overnight high is one of the overnight high, the open, and the overnight low. And in some cases, the real-time session high and low I use as well. But the overnight high and the low and the open are very key support and resistance lines that I keep an eye on. In addition to settlement, which I haven't added the prior settlement, and that goes across ES, CL, and gold. What I'd like to now do is add a swing profile to this. And you can see in this case that with each of these regions, I apologize for the clutter, but I just wanted to convey the effect of the stair stepping here, is with the price breaking up through the overnight high, if I pull this in a bit, you can see here in these cases, prices, because it's actually broken above the actual overnight high, it's not actually coming back even within 1 or 2 ticks of the CWAP in this case. Now, obviously, as to where you anchor this and start this, that comes with experience. As you know, if it breaches the VWAP or the DWAP recommendation to actually shift and adjust it right. So I'm actually going to keep shifting this here. So starting here, so you can see here by shifting this from here to here. Now here actually price is contained within the VWAP DWAP area, but if I shift it to here, you can see now price in the early stages, it's trailing CWAP, and it comes back to touch CWAP above the overnight high. Now by using these decision point profiles as building blocks as this swing evolves, when it's not clear where to initiate the anchor of a swing, especially in the early stages, you can utilize these decision points around these, particularly around support and resistance. Now these are the ones that I use. If you have any other support and resistance lines on levels or pivots and pivot zones that you use, in working with these regions of the confirmed pattern, it really can help to zoom into the cluster information that's been confirmed. So it's revealing the structure and what is happening now in the market. This can really help you to plan an entry at or 1 or 2 ticks above the POC and using the value area low. And in this case, had you left the CWAP swing starting here, you can see that it's enabled you to actually get into the trade where the price didn't actually come back to the CWAP VWAP zone. So it basically ran away. But if I now remove these, you can see by virtue of these regions, there's quite a force of energy that's driving a little rotation and a drive up, a small rotation and a drive up. So price isn't actually getting a chance in this case to actually come back to the CWAP if I chose to leave it positioned where it is. I wanted to convey that as an example of how you can use the decision points with each of these confirmed patterns to work with a swing in the early stages when it's not clear if it's going to break out prior resistance or prior decision points. So you can actually keep yourself engaged with these regions and with these confirmed patterns to help you to assess and give you confidence to actually place an entry. Let's move on to another example. In this chart, I wanted to cover oil, and again around the opening of the oil New York session. I have purposely elected to demonstrate and illustrate this bonus indicator with the history charts as opposed to right at the live edge, for the purposes of there's a lot of detail here, and I decided it was more optimal to demonstrate some of the patterns in some of the prior charts with respect to some of the support and resistance levels, and it enables you to see where these areas there's follow through and testing that occurs on a repeatable regular basis. Quick recap again, we have the green dashed line is the overnight high, the red dashed line is the overnight low. So if I scroll this back, you can see it's incorporating this region for the overnight from the London oil session. Previous real-time high is in the dashed black and the open is in the white. So coming into the actual open itself, you could see that there was a drive up to attempt to penetrate the previous real-time high from the open. Price is driven back through the open. And we have this series of red regions. And if you, as I mentioned before, really pay attention to the actual range of the drive, particularly when you've got this 3-bar pattern, when both of these qualify, you can see it's connecting this one to this one to this one. Not every pivot is created equal, and you can see by the range for some of these, the actual follow-through effect that it often has. So do pay attention to the drive and the energy behind each of these pivots. I'm going to add some decision points here to the first couple here as we open up into the first. This line here is the 330 line approximately in London. So I just have this as a gauge to know when the equity market has been open for the actual cash equity market. So let's add some decision points to this area that's unfolding for each of these. Got this one here. So you can see there's a stair stepping for each of these pivots that are occurring just below the open. Each of them is coming back to test the prior POC region. So this one is coming back to test here, and this one's coming back to test here. So there's several attempts to come up and drive back through each of these areas. Each one is failing to breach the POC area. What I'm going to do is enable this profile here for risk reward, tick behind the value area price. I'm just going to extend the risk reward of this here. The entry here has been set to 58.45 with a 5 tick stop. If I wanted to put this another tick behind, for example, so that's I'm adjusting the value area high price. You can see we have 6 ticks of risk here and the projections of the risk reward. So just expanding this open, various attempts to come back up to this area, down here, here, and even continuing here before the actual market falls away. So we have a very good risk reward opportunity here, and you can see the projections here for that. So even before we hit the overnight low, we have the potential to make 6 to 1 on this trade just by observing these confirmed pattern pivots, which is confirming the energy drive, what is happening in the market now, using the cluster auction information, building upon these, observing the stair steps just below the open price. So I look at this and say, I like this price area with what is happening in the clusters and in the actual auctions themselves to consider a trade for a low risk reward. So you can see, as I said, I've added the risk reward here. So there's plenty of time to place an order here should you wish to follow this process. So whilst we are in this consolidation phase, and it is absolutely not easy to determine which way the market is likely to break, choose to apply these decision points to this area to give you that building block analysis. If you choose to stick with the CWAP, VWAP swing entry, once we've actually broken out of this range consolidation, if I had a swing profile to here, see that we've broken through the overnight low here, price is coming back up into the CWAP, VWAP area, but additionally we have these confirmed patterns here and here. So particularly in reference to here, the fact that you've established and you can see that these regions are behind you and a clear break below the open with 1, 2, 3, 4 energy force drives selling, evolving into the swing with another pattern here. Although we can see here it only travels approximately 40 ticks, it's giving you that additional confidence of placing an entry here with the CWAP and the VWAP. You can see here we have this pivot here in red. We've driven through the overnight low. You could sit and wait here for price to actually come back to test and go back to the overnight high, which if I scroll along here, it does come back to this after it drives lower. But with this pattern here, that can help you to actually take that entry because it's continuing to confirm the drive through these clusters of this attempt to lift the prices back. So using this information in a swing alongside using it in these consolidation areas just below or around or above one of your support and resistance levels, you have the option of working with this and getting into the move earlier for a defined low risk to reward, or you can wait till the actual breakout and add to the swing information and confirmation to actually place a trade at the CWAP or in other cases at the VWAP level. If I extend this swing forward just to see how the price interacts with the CWAP and VWAP, we can see that we are printing volume here above the VWAP region. If I now create the building blocks for these pivots that have built from the lows here, so you can see again we have this stair-stepping approach, and the market's coming back to test the value area here, and indeed it continues with this drive up and then it pulls away again. In certain instances, you can see that I've added these stair steps to establish where the point of control in the value area is, and also looking to see how clean is the distribution. In some cases, the distribution is going to be cleaner than others. But with this up region here and this up region here, it does, what I've noticed is it can actually help to combine these, because essentially you've got two up thrusts in the up direction. And by combining this, you can see the profile distribution here it's a nicer distribution with the point of control here, with these bars coming back to test very close to the POC and cluster area. So I just wanted to highlight that in addition to placing the decision points at each of the building blocks, in certain cases it can actually help to combine the actual consolidated volume of these two confirmed patterns and actually having a look at the distributions of these. Through practice and observation of drawing these profiles, you will be able to see when the distributions are clear, have a clear value area and decision and point of control.